Without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker that will be kicking off the meeting. James Scongack is a friend for almost everyone in the audience. He is a tireless advocate for Canada as a global leader in research, development, production, and innovation of medical isotopes and radiopharmaceuticals in healthcare, with a sincerity and vision that is infectious. In addition to his day job as a vice president in Bruce Power, he's a strong advocate for cancer care, from serving as a chair for the Pediatric Oncology Group of Ontario to advocating for his local hospital, the Scongack Memorial Hospital. Please welcome the chair of Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council, James Scongack.
It's always amazing when the microphone works. I haven't had the best luck lately. Firstly, thank you very much, Patrick and Rebecca, for the kind introduction. And I want to welcome you all to our annual Theranostics conference. It's pretty amazing to me to see just the growth in not only the attendance, but the enthusiasm at today's session. And just to kind of start with a bit of background, there's a number of individuals in the room, and I would like to recognize them all, but I'm always worried I'm going to miss somebody. But there's this amazing coalition across Canada in our isotope sector that has come together over the course of the last 4 to 5 years to really create what we have today. And I really want to take a few minutes at the start of the conference to really re-anchor us on where we started as a CNIC, where we are and where we're going. But before I do that, what I always like to say is that leadership is a choice. It doesn't matter what role you're in, it doesn't matter what your level of expertise is on any given topic, that every single day, regardless of the job that we have, that we can all be leaders. And a real mentor of mine once said that leadership is not a title, and I'm a big believer in that. But we wouldn't be all here today without very, very strong leadership and people that step up and go and above and beyond. And there's one individual that I want to start by recognizing, because I don't think we would all be here today without her leadership. And she actually doesn't even know she's getting recognized this morning, but Melody, who's working on something right now. So she wasn't totally paying attention until I mentioned her name, because she thinks, yeah, James is going to get somebody to stand up in the crowd and get recognized. But Melody, I'd like you to come up to the stage. You're not expecting this morning. So this actually tells me your staff did not lie to me that they haven't said anything to you about this. And so let's give Melody a round of applause. She's our executive director. And there's here comes Evan. So as you may know, we have a set of CNIC awards that we award every either February or April up at the CNA conference in Ottawa. And they're to recognize outstanding individuals in our isotope sector. And as many of you know, Melody's been with the CNIC for a number of years, our executive director for coming up on a year now, Melody. And so the executive committee, we got together by an email chain earlier this week and decided we were going to go outside a process. So we did break the rules, but I'm known to do that, those of you that know me. And we have decided on behalf of the CNIC to award Melody, and we wanted to do it here for you all to see our MVP of the Year award. So congratulations, Melody. Awesome. Here, we're gonna have a nice picture here. I've already put you on the spot. Do you want to say anything? You're very good with no notes. Yeah. There you go.
The only thing that I want to say is that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my team. I see a couple of them at the back, Evan over here. None of this would have been possible without them. As you can expect, putting on a conference like this is an extremely large amount of work, and so over the last couple of months, my team has been working extremely hard, and all I can say is that I hope that everyone enjoys. I hope that everyone makes a new friend, a new connection here over the next couple of days, and I hope that you return and join us again in 2026 next year. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Melody. That's great. Well, it's always nice when you can do a surprise and the person is legitimately surprised. Have you ever got one of those things in the past where they're like, you have to pretend to be surprised, which is always a little bit awkward? I can tell Melody was, and I also know because she was giving me a bit of a hard time about I had to stick to the schedule and the time limit. So, I hope you're giving me a bit of latitude on the time now that we did that start. So there's always a second agenda. So I want to spend a few minutes, and I will stick to the time because the people that you're really here to hear from today is, the panelists coming up, because they're the ones that are doing the work in our sector. But what I wanted to do is take a few minutes and just walk through why we're all here and why the CNIC exists. So for over 50 years, Canada has been a world leader in the production, the development, the use of life-saving medical isotopes. And if I look back in Canada's history, whether it was the development from our friends at Triumph of large cyclotron facilities, the development of a research reactor at Chalk River, all of the processing, development that went with that, the building of our CANDU reactors across Ontario and in the province of New Brunswick, we have been a global leader on this front. In fact, we just celebrated the 73rd anniversary of the first cobalt beam therapy treatment in London, Ontario. And actually, we were so proud of it 73 years ago that we created a stamp. So if you're a stamp collector, there's a nice stamp out there. But apparently we don't do stamp collections that much anymore. But we were so proud as Canadians that was one of the most important things we achieved that year 73 years ago. And things have continued to evolve and innovate since that first cobalt beam treatment in London, Ontario. And thank goodness that they have, because 40% of us in this room will get cancer in our lives. 40%. 100% of us will be impacted by cancer in our lives. And we all have our own story when it comes to cancer, our own lived experience. We have amazing frontline Canadian healthcare professionals that deal with this every single day. But it is really our job, or whether you're in Canada or you're somewhere else in the world, that our frontline healthcare professionals have access to the best tools when they have to support a patient and a family when they're really at one of the lowest points in their lives. And they rely on everybody in this room working together, not just here in Canada, but around the world. But I think the other thing that's really important for us to recognize is that treatment that we celebrated 73 years ago in London, Ontario, there's still about 3 billion people in the world that do not have access to that treatment that we had 73 years ago. So that tells us that we as a world community have a long way to go. It's not just about taking care of ourselves as Canadians. It's about recognizing cancer is a world challenge, and we as Canadians, people look to us to play a very important leadership role when it comes to that. And that's really why the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council was formed. It was formed out of an idea. A lot of people in this room today came together to form the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council, and now we're over 100 members. Great partners like UHN, CMIE, BC Cancer, London Health Sciences Centre, CMAH, Sunnybrook, a lot of organizations that we've partnered with to really make this happen. But it's also a recognition that we are always stronger when we are united. The world needs a lot more of Canada in the challenges that we have, and isotopes are an area that we can continue to lead the world as a country. So that's why we formed the CNIC, but it's also the same reason why we launched our Isotope for Hope campaign. It is very difficult to predict the future in the world that we know today, but we do know there'll continue to be constants. We continue to hope and aspire that 3.5 billion people in the world that don't have access, there's the stamp that you see on the top right, that don't. We hope that we can do work, whether it's with the IAEA, the international community, for them to have access to what we have become quite used to here in Canada and the Western world. But we also recognize, and you'll see this throughout the conference today, there are amazing, very hopeful new diagnostics, new therapy, or my favorite field, as Rebecca knows and Patrick knows, theranostics. You know, I'm a simple guy, so my definition of theranostics is heat-seeking missiles when it comes to cancer. How do you find the cancer? How do you destroy the cancer and leave other areas of the patient unaffected? Because we all know cancer is not just about having cancer. It's also about the lifelong impacts from cancer. I chair an organization called the Pediatric Oncology Group of Ontario. It's amazing how Ontario and Canada is leading the way when it comes to pediatric oncology and understanding the long-term effects of survivors when it comes to cancer treatment. So what we are doing as an isotope sector is providing those heat-seeking missiles, accelerating them. So again, when our frontline healthcare professionals are faced with people at their lowest hour, that they have the best tools that they need. So the word that I like to always use is that the world is counting on Canada. There's nobody else in the world that has the capabilities that we have from top to bottom in the supply chain. So it's incumbent upon us to not just develop that, but to lead with that. And we're very fortunate here in Ontario, in provinces across Canada, British Columbia, at the federal level, to be getting very strong support and recognition from our governments that this is a strategic sector for Canada. And in the world that we're faced with, that is more important than ever. Can you please stand up in the room if you are somebody that works at a hospital or a frontline healthcare provider? Please stand up. Let's give them a round of applause. And don't be shy. You're all heroes. So thank you very much for what you do. Unfortunately, everybody in this room is going to be in a place at some point in their lives, whether it's themselves or somebody they know, somebody they love, somebody they care about, where they are going to be hanging on the edge of their seats with what the interaction that you have with them in a day. And so what I would just continue to challenge ourselves with is there's always a real focus on process and structure and timing and funding. As we're going through our discussions here over the next day or two, really focus on those individuals that just stood up and what matters most. We cannot go fast enough when it comes to the things we're talking about at this conference today. Time is not people's friend when it comes to cancer. And so in the world that we're in, where we're having a very healthy debate about how as a country can we do things better and quicker, and by the way, quicker does not need to mean that you sacrifice on quality or how you engage people, how you include people, how you bring them along. We have to really challenge ourselves with how do we go a lot faster. Faster, bigger, and now is a time in Canada's history where I think we have a real environment to achieve that. But remember, as we're having our conversations, what matters most and how do we quickly get the things that we're talking about to the people that need it. At Bruce Power, I always say anytime somebody comes to me with an idea to spend money, and I can tell you there's always ideas to spend money, I always say, I'll consider it if it's yes to one of the following three questions. Because to me, there's only three questions. Now, this is a bit of a nuclear-centric view of the world. Does it improve safety? Does it actually improve a piece of equipment in the plant? And does it make our workers' lives easier in doing their job? And if we haven't said yes to any of those three, I don't want to spend money on it. So what I would also challenge you to kind of, as we're thinking this with that leadership lens that we all are faced with, is when we're talking about our next steps is, are we focused on what matters most? Are we getting something quicker to the people that are counting on it? That's the only test that matters, right? There's economic considerations. Our businesses recognize have a commercial requirement to meet. But I can guarantee you, many, many years down the road, when you look back at what you did, it's not going to be the commercial successes that you're feeling rewarded with in your business. It's going to be what matters most. So let's keep that in mind today. The one other thing I want to spend a few minutes and talk about is I am a big believer. Now, it comes with my bias coming from the nuclear industry and Bruce Power producing about a third of Ontario's electricity. So I'm a very production-focused person. But I'm a big believer that when you have the right production and you have the right production concentrated, that it creates a tremendous opportunity, in this case for Canada, to build out from that production. I see the warden of Bruce County here, Warden Charbonneau. Chief of the Chippewas and Nawash, Greg Najuan. I just heard an amazing statistic the other day that 22% of the beef consumed and produced in Ontario comes from Bruce County and the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation traditional territory. Let's give that a round of applause, because everybody is that is the best beef in the world, by the way. And if you think about, well, what does that mean for agriculture? Well, it actually means that if we have production in a place, it means that all of the follow-on activities can be closer to production. Why do we focus a lot on nuclear power for clean electricity production? Well, because the thesis is that the more you centralize that production, we're able to get a lot of other value out of that. The challenge we have as Canadians is that we are really good at producing base products, whether it's our uranium out west, whether it's oil and natural gas, whether it's potash, whether it's critical minerals, whether it's nuclear power, whether it's isotopes. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. What we are not necessarily strong at is making sure we get as much of that value chain as possible. And so that is why in the Isotopes for Hope campaign, we really focused on two areas. How do we double production as a country by 2030? And you're going to hear from people in the cyclotron community over the next 2 days, the reactor power-based community. I see Laurentis is there, New Brunswick Power, Bruce Power, McMaster University through Research Reactor. We are on track as a country to double our production of medical isotopes by 2030. But just providing that isn't enough. The challenge that we have as Canadians is how do we secure more of that value chain? So from that end patient we need to be focused on to the production, how do we build that middle part? And that is something we have to be very honest as Canadians that historically and traditionally we are not as strong on. The isotope sector is an exception, and the fact that there's 420 people in this room is a good example. But I always like to say that where a product is produced is the anchor. And when we see the global demand in isotopes continue to grow, the world is counting on Canada to meet that doubling of production. And not just to double the production at a peak or at a one time, but provide the production on a reliable basis, whether it's through our cyclotrons, our power reactors, being able to deliver those with a high degree of reliability. Because if we can't be reliable, we are letting down our frontline healthcare workers. They have enough areas to manage and to juggle without being worried about supply. So it's not just about meeting the supply, it's about having the reliability of the supply. And I can tell you, with my Bruce Power hat on, we've been producing lutetium with Isogen, with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, our friends from ITM. We have not missed a shipment in 2.5 years. And by the way, anybody that hasn't been to a Bruce County winter knows how much of a success that is. And so we have to always be focused on that reliability. I know the team at Triumph exactly the same. High degrees of reliability. McMaster University, high degrees of reliability. The work at Laurentis, our cobalt supply through Nordion, high degrees of reliability. That is our advantage. And if we have that, we have the ability to attract more of the supply chain. My last couple of minutes, I want to double down again and just talk about the rest of the world for a minute. We live in an environment that is very inward-looking in the modern world we live in. And I'm not going to get into politics today. I think that's just a fair statement of where we are. And so it's very important for us as Canadians to recognize we have to take care of our friends and our neighbors and our fellow Canadians. We want them to have access to the best care in those circumstances. But we are part of a world. And I always say that, you know, if you look at it statistically, I think I'm the luckiest person in the world, and many of you would probably feel the same way of yourselves, to be born in Canada, to live in Canada, to have access to everything we do. There's a lot of luck involved in that. But there's 3 to 3.5 billion people in the world that don't have access to the healthcare that we do. And that's not okay. It doesn't mean that we need to sacrifice something here, but it means we have to do more abroad. And so very honored that the CNIC has signed an agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency to support their Raise from Hope campaign, which is really about making sure that people in these countries around the world that don't have access to this, the same kind of treatments we have here in Canada, begin to have better access to that. And if you just look at where on that map, where there is radiation therapy equipment in the world versus where is the world population, there is a significant disparity there, and that's not right. And so that doesn't need to take anything away from what we need to do here in Canada, but it means we have a leadership role to play. And so I'd ask you is not to just look inward, look outward, not only because it's the right thing to do, but I actually think it's strategically important for Canada. That is the role that we have historically played as a country. And you're going to see us talk a lot more about that in the days ahead. What I really want to end on is an announcement that we're making today to expand our Isotopes for Hope campaign. And we're pleased to launch today a new oncologist network. And that oncologist network is going to commence with 4 co-chairs that are going to be our ambassadors. And before I talk about why we're forming this network, I want to just talk about the importance of oncologists. One of the things that I have learned in nuclear power is that sometimes when I get up and I talk about the safety or importance of nuclear power, a lot of people kind of discount what somebody at an executive level may say. I don't like that. I don't agree with it. But there's certain people that the world really trusts when it comes to certain topics. In the case of nuclear power, it's engineers or it's frontline workers. When people hear from those individuals and those individuals give them assurances, they take those assurances to heart. When it comes to medical isotopes, the influential leaders in Canada are the oncologists. They are the ones that have the most credibility along with the other frontline providers, whether they're nurses, technologists, other support staff. Those are the individuals that can best tell our story when it comes to that, what matters most and what is at the end. So I don't know if the 4 co-chairs are in the room. If you could maybe just stand up. Let's give a round of applause to our 4 co-chairs here. Dean, Rebecca, Daniel, and Andrew, who have agreed to take this on. I know there's another meeting going on, but these individuals represent 4 geographic locations across the province. They're going to launch this ambassador co-chairs through this oncologist and frontline leaders network. And what we want to do is get frontline healthcare leaders, oncologists, technologists, people on the front lines as part of this network across Canada. Because the next evolution of what we want to do, we have to build that coalition of this very strong Canadian message coming from those people that experience this firsthand every day. So this is the next evolution of what we need to do as a CNIC. You know, I love listening to Patrick's podcasts on YouTube because, you know, somebody who's lived in Canada my whole life, there's work that is going on just down the street from here that I'm still surprised to hear for the first time. And the work, for example, that he and his colleagues do internationally. That is a story that we need to tell to a greater degree. And we need to bring those frontline leaders together to tell that message to Canadians, to the government, and to set us up for this huge opportunity. So I want to, again, thank you for your leadership in this space, for everything that you do. I hope when you leave this conference today, you feel, or tomorrow, that you're part of a family, a strong Canadian family, and I hope that you're energized around what is next. But let's never forget that the world is counting on Canada, that we have to stay focused on patients first, and getting to patients, getting these treatments sooner rather than later, that time is not our friend. And that also that we can't just look inward as to what our organization needs or our company needs or our province needs or our country needs. We need to look broadly because cancer is something that affects everybody in the world. So again, thank you very much for having me. I hope you have a fantastic conference, and I think I'm passing it back over to Rebecca. Have a good day.